The session which we are going to start now is about how we are keeping our 1 billion hearts beating. This is about the stories of those doctors who spend long days in cath labs and hospitals ensuring that a proper medical intervention is reaching to anyone suffering from heart-related diseases. So let me welcome our esteemed panel this afternoon, talking about how this nation is going to ensure that our billion plus hearts keep beating. We have Padma Bhushan awardee Dr. T.S. Clare. He is the chairman of PSRI Heart Institute in New Delhi and heads the electrophysiology program there. Many of these advanced treatment methods of heart disease have been introduced in India by Dr. Clare. He was instrumental in establishing cardiology and electrophysiology department at various centers in India that brought quality medical care to people outside the metropolitan cities. We also have Dr. P.P. Mohanan. He is the president-elect of Cardiological Society of India and is the director and head of cardiology at Westfort High Tech Hospital in Kerala. He has received the Distinguished Service Award in 2008 from the then President of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. We also are going to be joined by Dr. Sudeep Khasa. He is a senior consultant with the Department of Interventional Cardiology at Uzala Cygnus Hospital, an organization which is providing critical health care in the underserved and unserved areas of northern India. So let me begin our discussion today by, and would like to go to Dr. T.S. Clare, I believe most senior among us today. Dr. Clare, as you see that for past few decades, heart problem in India have increased manifold, and I believe around 3 million lives are being lost annually because of this disease now. And you can correct the number. I'm not the doctor and expert of this area, so maybe wrong on the numbers. The regions cited range from lifestyle changes to genetic, propensity. The general threshold of disease onset in India has also become almost a decade lower. What we are missing on this and what we are doing wrong that we are becoming, we are having such a big burden of cardiovascular disease on our populations. Dr. Clare.
Kamal, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this, rather I would say very fascinating session. I'll thank also Nikki Gupta, who was insistent that I should join this program. And I think it's the right time perhaps to talk about something away from COVID. I think people are tired of listening to COVID day in and day night. Now, coming to the heart disease in India, there is no doubt what you said very rightly, that India is capital of heart disease practically now in the world. We have more than 1 billion people in this country, and if you see the quantum of disease, it's massive. If you take the heart diseases in general, or the most important disease in our country, there are two basically. One is the hypertension and hypertensive heart disease. Another is coronary artery disease. Coronary artery disease is the disease where you develop blockage in the vessels, the heart or brain or kidney. It's a generalized vascular disease. Any bed, vascular bed can be involved. But one of the most important bed is the heart itself, where the two coronary arteries supply the heart muscle, and when you develop blockage in that, then people get either angina, or they get heart attack, or they die suddenly because of that problem. Now, it has been estimated by various studies in India that roughly 8 to 9% people, adult population in metropolitan cities has coronary artery disease, which is a huge number. If you go to the rural population, even the rural population has around 4 to 5% evidence, incidence of coronary artery disease. Coming to hypertension, is a very, very big killer in the whole world. In fact, roughly 25% of the adult population in the world has hypertension. When we say hypertension, that anybody's blood pressure more than 130/80 is hypertension. And the incidence in females is a little bit less, something like 22%. Males is around 27%, but overall it is 25%. But the fascinating thing is that if you take the people more than 60 years of age, roughly 60% people have hypertension. That is very, very disturbing. Now, if you take people more than 65 years of age, almost 65% of the men and 75% of the females have hypertension. This is amazing and surprising that elderly females have hypertension even more than men. Though up to the menstruational age, up to 50, 60, their chances of hypertension are less. But when they cross 65, then the hypertension is much more. Now, hypertension indirectly causes coronary artery disease. It causes direct damage to the heart, which is called as hypertensive heart disease. People develop heart failure. There is another new entity, we call it diastolic heart failure. Now, diastolic heart failure is where the pumping capacity of the heart is normal, but still patient develops heart failure. They have breathing difficulty, they have swelling over the feet, they have, inability to work. So this is a big new animal on the horizon, which is called as diastolic heart failure or heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. That means the pumping capacity is normal, but primarily here it is the relaxation property of the heart which is at fault. And the bad thing is that hypertension is the most important cause of development of arrhythmias in the heart, particularly atrial fibrillation. See, a long-standing hypertension, the chambers of the heart, the atria, they start enlarging because the pressure increases, they start enlarging, and then they develop atrial fibrillation, which has a lot of implications, health implications, not only that it produces irregular heart palpitations, it increases the chance of heart failure, it also increases morbidity and mortality. The longevity of the people with AF is less as compared to people without AF. So we have no doubt that the hypertension, coronary artery disease is a major problem in this country. There's another bad news. Bad news is that Indians develop heart disease and heart attacks almost 10 years younger as compared to Western civilization. Another bad news, that when they develop, let's say, first time heart attack, myocardial infarction, जिसको हम कहते हैं, the chances of mortality are more in Indians as compared to Western civilization. Thirdly, when you do their angiography, they are more likely to have more disease, triple vessel disease, as compared to Western civilization. Another bad news, our 30% of the people or 33% of the people who come to me or any good cardiology center, roughly 1/3 of the patients have diabetes. And this addition of diabetes and hypertension is the worst combination. These people develop disease which is called diffuse coronary artery disease. Diffuse means जगह जगह पे blockage है. अगर जगह जगह पे blockage हैं, if we have multiple blockages in the same artery, now these arteries are neither fit for bypass surgery nor they are fit for angioplasty. So these patients are a very, very big challenge in India, and I've seen a lot of these disease in Bangladesh also. Diffuse disease, you don't know what to do about these patients. You continue medicine, they continue to suffer, and that's another bad news in India. Now, if I have to come to my own assessment, I came from UK in '89, and I've seen the scenario in India with heart disease for last 30 years. Why we are at a disadvantage of developing heart disease? Initially, we thought that in India we don't have heart disease. We have tuberculosis, we have malaria, we have dengue. But the reality is that the chances of heart disease in India are 3 times more than people in America. Like I told you that the coronary artery disease, the incidence is around 8 to 9% in India. In adult population, in US, it's around 3%, 2.5%. Not only that, there are multiple studies available that Indians living in UK and Indians living in USA, they have 3 times chance of developing heart disease as compared to the local population. This is a very well documented data. It's not a guesswork. It is very well documented data. Why God has been so unkind to us, I really don't know. But I think fundamentally what has happened, in my opinion, that in last 20-25 years, there has been a massive change of lifestyle of people. People have stopped working physically. People have started eating more. People have started eating more junk food. Availability of food is more. Now, even if you go back 30 years back, for example, I'm from Punjab. It was very rare to see anybody smoking in Punjab 30 years back or 35 years back. But gradually, even the Sikh community, which I belong to, many of them, they smoke. Females have started smoking in big cities as well as in smaller towns. So the incidence of smoking has increased. We have stopped working. We have more stress because everybody wants to earn money in one day. They don't want to wait for the second day. They want a big Mercedes car right away. They don't have patience. The younger generation has no patience. Now we have multinational companies. Multinational company means people working there, they have targets. Their lifestyle is horrible. Believe me, horrible. They go on roaming from one city to another with a laptop. They have no khane ka time nahi. They have no proper exercise. So they will take junk food. They increase the weight. They will develop diabetes. And I've seen many of these young educated boys, IITs and IT technology people, at the age of 30 years, they have a myocardial infarction. So if I have to say that the major thing what has happened is change of lifestyle. That has increased our weight. We have a massive problem of obesity. Now the maximum number of obese people in the world is in China, number 1. Number 2 is India, by the way. No, sorry, number 1 is America, number 2 is China, number 3 is India. Total number of obese people. And because of that, there is a lot of incidence of diabetes, particularly maturity onset diabetes. It was very rare to find when I was studying in PGI Chandigarh, to have a diabetic person who is 30 or 35 years of age. It's not very common. It's very common to have a heart attack at 25 or 30 years of age, which was unheard of 20 years back. So obesity, hypertension, poor lifestyle, lack of exercise, and stress are the main fundamental reason that which has led to this very bad scenario and epidemic of our country. In simple words, if somebody asks me that how to prevent heart disease, what I tell them? That please follow the lifestyle of your grandfather.
Sir, I'll come for the prevention later.
And if you follow that advice, what your grandfather used to do, you will be okay.
Thank you so much. You actually very well described the situation of, how and why we are seeing a lot of, spurt in the cardiovascular problems in the country. I would like to go to Dr. P.P. Mohanan. And Dr. Mohanan, Dr. Clare comes from the the North India, and he said that he comes from Punjab, and we at North India are known to have some bad lifestyle maybe, and also the eating habits are very, very different. I want to understand from you that these points which Dr. Clare highlighted, that even in US, the Indian population has higher risk of developing cardiovascular diseases. We here are predisposed. Are we genetically predisposed to have, higher chances of getting into higher, cardiovascular problems, or it is primarily man-made factors like lifestyle or smoking or obesity, which Dr. Clare has highlighted?
Don't blame the nature. Blame your nurture. See, as you said rightly, India harbors 20% of the world population, but we have 60% of the world's heart disease patient population. So we have a huge population mainly because of the preponderance of risk factors. I'm not saying genetics has no role. Genetics definitely will have a role. Dr. Clare has extensively dealt with the preponderance of risk factors amongst Indians, whether it is an Asian Indian or Indians migrated to the other parts of the world. So there could be an element of genetics involved. I'm not negating that, but fundamentally, it is the preponderance. For example, in South, there is not much of a South-West, North differences in the incidence of coronary artery disease. When we did the prevalence of risk factors study, prevalence of coronary artery disease, fortunately, Kerala Cardiological Society has been in the forefront of gathering information on the prevalences and of risk factors, and also on the acute heart attacks. And what we found was astounding, as he said, about 30% prevalence of hypertension, about 18 or 16 to 18% prevalence of diabetes. Even the prevalence of coronary artery disease in the urban area was something to the tune of 11 to 12%, not 7 or 8, as earlier mentioned. Unfortunately, in Kerala, there is no urban-rural difference. It's all rural. So you have a high prevalence. So the important thing, apart from saying that we have high hypertensive, diabetic, obesity population, the World Heart Federation and the other data give you a very pitiable result of control of these diseases. Now, only 15% of our hypertensive in India are controlled to the target blood pressure goal. Not to speak of control of diabetes or cholesterol disorder. So fundamentally, the problem lies with the excessive risk factors, not controlling the risk factors. So these two are possibly the most important reasons why we have a preponderance of the disease, and it is very much the time for us to think about, you were mentioning earlier about we will come to the prevention later. So we will come to the prevention later.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mohanan. So you are saying that it is more of our own nurturing, or the way we are, choosing to live, that is leading to, the increasing incidence of this disease. But sometimes I also feel that all those factors which we counted are also equally prevalent in Western society, and I think our whole lifestyle is getting more and more westernized, what Dr. Clare said. So still, why we have more chances of developing cardiovascular disease? Let me take maybe Dr. Sandeep Khasa is with us. So
Kamal, I'll just say one of the greatest epidemiologists, cardiologists, or the preventive cardiologists in the country, not in the country, in the world, Professor Salim Yusuf, he is basically from Kerala. He said, you strip a person of his risk factor, then an Indian is equal to Caucasian. So it is the risk factors which makes you vulnerable.
Okay, yes, doctor. So Dr. Sandeep, what's your take on this? You heard Dr. Mohanan and Dr. Clare, highlighting these aspects. Why do we have more diseases? Do you have any more perspective on it, sir?
Thank you very much, Kamal, for inviting me over here. I am a junior cardiologist as compared to Dr. Claire and Mohan. They are my esteemed seniors. And they have rightfully said in India we have a very high incidence of cardiovascular disease. The major factor is our lifestyle, what they have highlighted. Most important thing, lack of sleep. People now doesn't take good sleep. Then lack of exercise. Thirdly, the diet we eat. Now it contains lots of fats and they are usually saturated fats which we eat from outside. People don't use good oils when you are taking food from outside. My generation, as compared to Sir's generation, we are eating at least 3-4 meals in a week from outside, which we don't know how it is cooked. And it contains lots of fats, which is basically causing this diabetes, hypertension to come early in our life. And rightly said by our sirs, our lifestyle is the main cause why we are seeing such a surge in cardiovascular disease in our country. I have moved from Gurgaon to a smaller district 2 years back to work in my own district. I was having an impression over there that it is basically urban disease. But now in the rural areas, I see people coming of age of 20s and 30s having MIs and they are visiting us regularly. The main cause is our diet has increased, but the exercise which we used to do in our fields, now nobody does it. All things are mechanized. They does everything on tractors and all these things, and they are not doing exercises. But the diet which our forefathers take, they are taking same. In addition to that, we are also having fast foods. And secondly, another thing is our forefathers used to take a good amount of sleep. Now the sleep has reduced tremendously in youths. They are spending more time on these WhatsApp and all these things. Now you have got Netflix and so many things. They have their times on them rather getting a good sleep and a good exercise, which is basically leading to increase in all these diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular diseases.
Okay, Dr. Sandeep, thank you so much for bringing that perspective also, that how, which Dr. Claire also highlighted, that this is not only about the urban, disease anymore. It is equally, and you have, kind of giving a testimony of that as you are practicing there. This particular gratitude week, which we are doing, is also about understanding the lives of our doctors. And while we go on emergencies and when we have these diseases, which may be many times something infects us as COVID-19, which is not your choice to get, but it is also something which we develop ourselves, like cardiovascular diseases, which you are all attributing to the lifestyle. Dr. Mohanan, I think Dr. Claire has gone to the surgery again. Dr. Mohanan, you people have to, as a cardiologist, you have to spend a lot of time in the emergency rooms. And also, as I said, we hear and what I have seen also, you have extended days to, since the burden of the disease is too much, that I think you people are a lot of time in the cath labs. Has been the, isn't it a little bit of stressing for cardiologists also to work so long? And do you sometimes regret to be a cardiologist? You could have been some other specialist rather than being a cardiologist.
I will not say that. I think I will always consider it as a privilege to be trusted with something as important as your heart. And I always say, arms to God, that I've been entrusted with job. So it is true that cardiologist job is a 24/7 job, but that is that is the good part of it. The interventional cardiology, at least, as even though I'm not as senior as Klebel, I did my cardiology training in mid-80s. And that was a time when the interventional cardiology was, coming in a big way. But then of late, you could see here that it has expanded so well. The brave new world that has considerably reduced the problems for our patient. At the same time, as you said, the increase the work stress for the cardiologist. But then that is you are trained for. We are trained for taking care of our patient. And as you said, the burnout, which every time the Western media, we don't dwell on the burnout of doctors very well, but then that also we are seeing in India. Now we see young cardiologists because of the work stress now giving it to, but then there are remedies for that. I'm sure Dr. Clark can spread some light on that.
Dr. Claire, my question was, we are seeing that you people spend a lot of hours on cath labs and emergency rooms, and does it also add to the stress in your life, which is, you said that the stress of work, long hours, multinationals, pressure, targets. You also have a target, I believe, to cure as many people as possible, or to make sure that every time you operate on, you get the right outcome. Does it also plays a role in the heart health of Dil Ka Doctor?
Yeah, am I audible, Kamal?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So first of all, I want to reiterate what Dr. Mohannan said. See, in my opinion, it is the biggest blessing of life from God if anybody becomes doctor. I will tell you the reasons. And if you become cardiologist, it is the biggest blessing from God. Why? Why it's a blessing to be doctor? If I take it this way, that if God has considered me capable and worthy of taking care of human beings, my fellow human beings, He has already considered me higher than others. He could have made me mochi, He could have made me a butler, He could have made me anything in the life. Now there are people who earn money by cutting, grass and cutting cows and serving meat, but God has made me a doctor. That we know you are better than others. You look after your human beings. Now, Zindagi mein, what is there the best thing in the human body? Nothing better than heart. The poetry has been written. Your lot of grants, lot of books, lot of shairi, lot of these ghazals have been written about heart. And if you are a doctor of heart, what else you want in life? And I tell always my patients, I say I put a catheter and I go directly into the left ventricle of the patient. No wife, no husband can go into the heart of any of their spouse, but I can go. And many times I ask them, well, I can see some girlfriends in your heart. Should I tell your wife or not? So I think it's a great privilege. Now coming to the stress associated with the profession, there is no doubt that in medicine is one of the very, very stressful professions for almost any doctor. Why it's stressful? First of all, many long years of studies, hard studies, lot of exams, then long duties as residents, as fellows. We have worked 36 hours non-stop in our PGI days. Then when you become doctor, then it's a responsibility which is almost like a 24/7, so then when you are a interventional cardiologist, what Mohannan said is that, for example, you are a physician, you write some medicine, go home, and patient dies. Patient will be upset, or the relation will be upset, but they are less likely to blame. But here, if you do a procedure on a patient, हम तो बहुत ठीक ठाक थे, ये तो आपने एंजियोप्लास्टी करी है, and that's why our patient has gone. So any patient, believe me, Kamal, any patient who comes on my table for any procedure, any patient can die. I understand that. And let me tell you, the people of this country have no idea that how much stress a doctor goes through. They only know one thing, the doctor is charging so much of money, doctor is fleecing us, doctor is doing surgery when it is not needed. There's nothing, I don't hear good things about doctors in this country now. And believe me, that many times I feel like quitting the profession and going to my village to do agriculture. That may be better. Because educated society, I tell you, educated people in Delhi, parties, anywhere you go, they just criticize the medical profession. And now we have become barrier all of a sudden. You know, even Modi Sahib is clapping 5 minutes for us. And now they are celebrating 1 week. But after 1 week, they'll again think the doctors are thieves. They break the walls of the hospital if the patient dies. So there is a lot wrong in this society. But that doesn't deter me to remain a doctor, to do my best in my life. Now coming to the stress of being a doctor or an interventional cardiologist. Stress is a individual perspective of life. Anybody's individual perspective of life. I have practically no stress being a doctor, being an interventional cardiologist. I do my procedures, I do with a peace of mind. And I'm not scared that a patient will die or a complication will occur, because I know some complication will occur, some patient will die. After all, I'm a human being, I'm not a god. And if a patient tells me that he wants 100% result, I said, you go to God, don't come to me. Sorry, I can't give you 100% result. India में problem ये है, Kamal, that the patients have no capability to listen to truth. They are not willing to listen to truth. They are not willing to listen to complications. They only want good things. And that is why doctors have to tell lies in this country. Because they are not willing to listen. If I tell them there is a 1% chance of death, they'll run away. ये कैसे हो सकता है? ये कैसे हो सकता है? फलाना हो सकता है, धमका हो सकता है. So there's a lot to be done by the way of education of people in this country. And there's another thing which people of this country don't realize, by the way, that in India, Indian doctors are one of the best in the world. This is clearly proven because I have worked in Middle East, I have worked in UK, I have worked in USA. Everywhere Indian doctors are preferred. But the same doctors in India are being criticized by Indians, because they don't understand their capability. The best doctors now in India, in the US are Indians. In fact, there is a study published by published study, I think by John Hopkins or by the Harvard, that they did a study that the patients treated by Indian doctors had less chances of dying as compared to other doctors. It is a documented, well-written publication, which Indians don't understand. Another thing Indians don't understand is that they are getting the best medicine at the level of the Western standard medicine with 1/3 or 1/4 or 1/5 of cost. No sensible doctor, even a simple doctor, will charge less than $100 for a consultation anywhere in the world. India doctors are available for 200, 300, 400 rupees, and that also are being criticized. So there's a lot to be done by way of health education, lot to be done to tell people that what we do, our standards are. Okay, I don't recommend, I am very against those doctors who do wrong things. There are some people who will do wrong things, but then every doctor, at least to my best of my knowledge, majority of the doctors are conscientious. They try to do best for their patient. They want to save the patient. They don't want to loot the patient, as is the perception in the society. So that perception we need to change. I think IMA has been very, very unsuccessful to take our case to the public, to the government of the country, that please understand the value of doctors of your country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clare. And you have highlighted most of the points which revolves around it. And this gratitude week which we are observing is not from the government of India. It is our initiative that we thought that there is a need of filling this ever widening trust deficit and gap between the doctor and patient. And we need to educate our patients that.
Kamal, before you continue, I want to tell you one thing more. Now, listen, I have said it many times. It has come in times of India. The people who do wrong things in department, in any sector, there should be accountability. Now, one of the biggest problems in India is that there is no auditing in India in a medical profession. Anybody can do any procedure, but there has to be auditing, and people who are guilty, they should be punished, so that at least good people should not get a bad name.
Yes, that is important. So, but as you highlighted, that majority of doctor, and I think each one of the doctor do try that they get best outcome for their patients. The costing and then the charges, and those may be the different thing, but at least nobody wants to get a bad outcome of the procedures or the healthcare which they do. Dr. Mohanan, I know Dr. Clare, and I can understand that how he has always been jovial, cheerful, and hardly you can see the state. I think he's in between of the surgeries also and coming going. But is it the same for you? You are also able to take those decisions, those stressful decisions on the cath lab, where do you are going to operate, not operate, patients, what patients want, what is the family expectation, and especially when the patient is in early life, early stage of their life, the pressure and expectations even further build up. What is your story on that?
I think we should understand that healthcare is it's a team sport. Now we have that is the success and sometimes the failure of that. And if you have a good team, then you are trying to now beat the burnout and the problems. Now these are things. This is a world over phenomena. The trust deficit that we were mentioning is something which have been seen prevalent. It is a little more excess in our country. But as Dr. Clare was saying, it will be a very bad day for me if I do a mistake that hurts my patient. Now, people have to realize that. That will be one of the most disappointing time of my day. So everybody has a responsibility and to observe. And one of the major problem has been our communications with the patients and relatives are also at fault. I will not completely absolve the doctors of the so-called. We have also a role, because many a time excess. One of the problems in medical curriculum education is that you're not taught. You're not taught to how to convey a bad news to your patient or your patient's attendant. But the things are changing, times are changing, and we have now, at least now, I'm sure, as Dr. Clare earlier was saying, it should be a wonderful time when we have a medical auditing, and that is definitely something which I look forward to.
Yes, Dr. Mohanan.
Okay, so basically you have the burnout. You have very many dissipating ways. You can, because I remember. Now, I was in the medical college for about 10 years, then in a private sector where we started doing the intervention, then we have a team, and then the gradually, you feel a little bit of your burnout. The best way to beat is going to something else. Like we do a lot of research these days. We have one of the largest publications these days. So it is always possible to combine academic research, teaching, have a good team, have your juniors, mentor them. These definitely will find a way to mitigate the problem of burnout. I'm sure about it.
I will agree with Dr. Mohanan. See, I tell you, I think the only way to have a better quality of doctor's life and to prevent burnout is that we should not work as individuals. We should work as teams. So if you have a team, for example, then you are not supposed to work, 24/7. That is nonsense. Nobody can work 24/7. Actually, if you work 24/7, you are doing disservice to the patients. Why? Because your mind cannot be capable to work like that. So you have to give proper rest to your mind. In fact, there should be law that no doctor should work for more than particular number of hours. Then somebody next should take over. In my team, for example, we have very clear policy that one person will be on duty after 5 p.m. He will take all the calls. People are not supposed to disturb everybody. So group practice, working as a team is the only solution. Not only it will give you better quality of life. It gives you better negotiation with the private hospital, the administration. If 7 cardiologists of a hospital say that we want this rate, this revenue from you, and if you don't agree, we are all going, they'll fall on your feet. What they do is that they divide the doctors. You know, they divide one doctor against the other. The doctors should understand one thing, that the victory is in unity, working together, working as we, not working as me. We should kill the word me in our life.
Thank you, Dr. Clare, to bring about that aspect also. But I like this idea that there should be a predefined work hour. As you see that, a pilot can fly only for a certain hours and will have to take a certain hours of rest. I think that is where, and I believe, and I always use this imagery, that the problem of trust deficit between the patient and doctor is the similar situation when a passenger sitting in a plane and thinking all the time that the pilot is not trained enough and he may crash. Now, this is the, a mental trauma will develop, that even if, you land safely on your destination, your mind is going to be in mess. So I think that is where we need to make sure that the healing process is not impacting because of this distrust, because of the many other things which come in between. And that's where we are trying to highlight with this.
Kamal, listen, actually, to be honest with you, because I worked in the Western civilization, there are two major differences between Western civilization and India. One is that in India, everywhere in life, there is a lack of trust. We have no trust in our builder. We have no trust in the shopkeeper. We go to a sari shop. We want to confirm from 2 other shops whether he's looting or he's giving the right price. If we have to buy a house, we have to ask 10 people, our contractor, because we don't believe him. But that's a reality. Why this phenomena has developed? Because there are people who are thieves in this country and they get away without being punished. Okay, human mind is same everywhere. Americans are not more honest than us, but there are systems, there are laws and regulations. In India, that application of law is missing always, because if a contractor fleeces you money, then you can't get the money back, whatever you do. You can go to the court for 20 years, nobody will listen to you. So lack of trust is in general, life's every field there is lack of trust. Similar is the problem with the medicine. So medicine cannot be, the doctors cannot be angels when everybody else is a dacoit or a thief. We are also part of the same society. The builder will come and he will start abusing the doctor that they are thieves, but he doesn't admit himself that how bigger thief he is than the doctor. So that is one difference, lack of trust. The second thing which I find in India is time. Whatever you say, their certainty is very little. For example, if I tell, okay, I will come at 7 p.m. or you come to me at 7 p.m., it doesn't mean that he will come at 7 p.m. It may be 8, it may be 9, it may be 10. So there's a lack of respect for time.
Responsibility.
In India. So everything is uncertain. Hoga ja nahi hoga, inshallah, hoga ja nahi hoga. So that is the type of life we live in India.
But it's absolutely right, even though it's painful to accept that. But then the people's trust has come down, mainly because of that, but also partly, as I was earlier mentioning, also because of our training program also have to change. We have to give more importance to the communication, more importance to clinical examination. See, unfortunately, because of the technological improvement, which is absolutely important, the technological importance should not take away the ritual of clinical examination. See, what happens these days is many of the time, the clinical examination is namke vaste. But the power of touch, of healing, no, cardiologist or any doctor doesn't cure. We heal, but we can definitely heal. And people should understand that. And as Dr. Clare said, it is something which we have to work also very hard to bring back that trust which we have been having years ago.
Dr. Clare, you're going to the surgery room again?
No, see, I have some cases lined up actually, but I am willing to answer any question you have.
So just hold on for 5 more minutes. Maybe we are going to end it shortly. But let me just take in your younger colleague, Dr. Sandeep, also to understand that you are a veteran. Dr. Mohanan is a veteran. Dr. Sandeep, how do you manage this? The stress of, as Dr. Claire also said, that many times the patient is not ready to listen to that truth. And so how do you manage, and you are working in an environment, I think you will work primarily at the Haryana, area where the maybe, apparent tolerance may be even lesser. How do you manage there?
So basically, I explain everything to the patient. And secondly, I'm living in my hometown. So I've got social interaction with the people even beforehand. I know many people over here who came to here for treatment with me. So it's basically the bond I got with them and the explanations I give them. Until unless my patient becomes ready, I don't do an intervention. Until unless he understands what I'm going to do and how it's going to affect him. That is the most important thing. And as Sir has said, it's very difficult to build a trust with your patient nowadays. Actually, I am belongs to a very younger generation. I've just practiced for last 5 years, and from right now, right from starting of my career, I have seen this thing only: trust deficit between patient and doctors. Maybe 15-20 years back, the condition was much better, but nowadays to develop a trust between you and your patient becomes very difficult. But being in a place where I live, I have lived there for 20 years beforehand, before going for my studies. So many people knows me. That helps me to make a bond between them. When I was living in Gurgaon, it becomes difficult to develop a trust because people are coming from different cities, and it's a first meeting a doctor gets with his or her patient, and it becomes very difficult for patient to understand that while doing an intervention in an acute MI setting, he or she may die. And people are not able to understand those things. Basically, we need education at the ground level. People should be taught what basically treatment options are, and they should be told about different the mortalities associated with the treatment, as well as what is best for them. This what
Thank
I
you
feel.
so much, Doctor. So I think you are better adapt to the new environment as you are working. You say that your experience itself, is most of that time you have seen that the building trust is a difficulty. Dr. Claire, I'll coming back to you, and we will have a quick round of two questions. One is, we are living in a COVID-19 pandemic time, and we saw in the last 45 days, or almost not 45, so sorry, now it's almost becoming 4 months, and that initial 50 days almost were having a situation where healthcare was broadly disrupted. What we believe and what we have seen, that you can put people in lockdown, but diseases cannot be put in lockdown. You can't stop heart attacks, you can't stop strokes. What has been your experience and how have you been able to manage to provide healthcare to your patients during the time of emergency in the last 4 months or 3.5 months of this COVID-19?
I think this is a very, very important, relevant question. In fact, Kamal, this COVID-19 has been a very, very new challenge in life to all of us in the whole world. And it has taught us many lessons. In medicine, particularly, what I realize is that we have underutilized the power of information technology, IT, and we have underutilized the telemedicine in this country. So what we have done actually during this episode is that we have shifted more and more to telemedicine, giving consultation, opinions on the phone, on video call, and the hospital has an application where consultation can be done on the telemedicine. But also I have realized that there are many patients who had severe heart problem. They didn't come to the hospital and they lost life because there's a lot of fear in the minds of people that if they go to hospital, they'll get corona. So we need to educate people also that everybody coming to hospital doesn't mean that you are going to get corona. If you have to take proper precautions, and in fact, one patient came with the battery depleted totally. He was getting episodes of unconsciousness, and he was calling 15-20 days back, and I told him that please come, we need to check your pacemaker. He didn't listen to me. Ultimately came with a complete heart block, and we had to do his replacement in an emergency situation. Now I know some patient who didn't come, they had a heart attack and at home. So it is both ways, we need more education to people, particularly as far as the heart is concerned. You cannot wait in many times. So there is no point sitting at home and getting feared from corona, because in fact the mortality of corona is very low. It is less than 1%, according to me, because there are a lot of positive patients, there are a lot of asymptomatic patients, but the chance of dying from other diseases is much more than from the corona. So that fear is totally, kind of realistic, and we need to tell people, and some kind of campaign by the government should be done that wherever they need treatment, they should not be scared of, they should go to the hospital.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clare, that to highlighting that despite the fear that the care is very much available at all hospitals, and all the doctors are trying to make sure that within these challenges of and limitations and of COVID-19, the care does not stop. Dr. P.P. Mohanan, I would also like to understand from you. We saw that the number of cases went down, which are reported in emergency, wards. And what was the reason? Was it, many people attributed to, better life, less stress, cleaner air, better food at home, no outgoing, no parties, no accident, no stress, no commuting, stress. Was that the reason, or the heart diseases continue to happen at the same pace? The only thing changed that people did not turn up to the hospital because of the fear of COVID-19.
No, that's a very important point you have brought in, because world over this has happened. We have three or four published data available about the disappearing heart attacks. No? Suddenly you see your ICUs are vacant, no heart attacks, no heart failures. And that was true. The study from the New York 9 hospitals, and the Spanish study, and the study from the Lombardy, which are all area where the COVID attacks were very, very high. And all of them understood that people have heart attacks, they refuse to come to the hospital, and they have, because the out of hospital cardiac arrest has been high. And one of the fear was that we are going to see all complicated heart attacks because people are remaining in their home with these symptoms. That is one aspect of it. In India, we don't have a true statistics, but at least the National Health Mission data showed that people visiting hospitals have at least 30 to 35% reduction in that. And right now, the Cardiological Society is on a mission to find out what is the percentage of patients who are admitted in the with acute coronary syndrome during this time, and that we are just trying to compare. One of the attributes could be, apart from patient not refusing to come to the hospital, the decrease in the environmental pollution. Sitting in Delhi, that one of the most polluted places in our country, that has been incriminated as an important cause of vascular inflammation. So reduced pollution and stress, work stress, and all this could be. We don't know exactly, but then one of the important reasons is people are refusing to come to the hospital with heart attacks. And we are going to see a more dangerous situation in the coming months.
That may be the collateral damage of COVID-19, which may come later to us.
True.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mohanan. Dr. Sandeep, would you like to make your final remark on that? about what can be the probable reason, or what is your message for your patients?
Sir, on a lighter note, our cases increased at least 2 times in these times, because most of the people from here used to go to Delhi. So because of fever of COVID, they never went there. But originally, the cases has decreased, and the main causes are, first is people's refusal. They don't want to go to hospital for symptoms. They want to stay at home because of their fear. Secondly, the people are less stressed. They are at their home. They are not stressed from their jobs, and we got cleaner air, as said by sir. It's lots of pollution in and around Delhi. All NCR have highest pollutions, and we got cleaner air just because of these lockdowns. And thirdly, they were doing more exercises. People become more health conscious in these times because of lockdown. They were doing exercises at their home, and they were having their proper diets. So that has also decreased the incidences. And maybe the people who has not visited hospital may came with complications later on, and then can increase burden on us. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sandeep. So here we are coming to the end of our session, and I would like to inform all of you and our audience also that this gratitude week, which we started from July 1 on National Doctors Day, will continue till July 7. We are on the 4th day of our observance and our gratitude for doctors. And in the today's session, you heard that how we have become the capital for the world when it comes to cardiovascular diseases or heart diseases, and we have a very, very high number of mortality associated with that, much more higher than what we see in this pandemic also. So what is the takeaway from here is that we as a nation need to take care of it. It's a wide ranging war against multiple diseases. We don't have only one enemy, which is COVID-19. We have enemies which are killing our population, our people, every day and in millions of numbers. So, and we lose those many lives every year. And this is the time that we pay our reverence, we pay our respect to our doctors, who are the first and last line of defense for any such disease, any such onslaught of disabilities which can come to us. So thank you so much, Dr. Clare, Dr. P.P. Mohanan, Dr. Sandeep Khaza to connect with us today on this Gratitude Week.